Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. I think that is the greatest contribution, to be here with your presence. So I salute you all for being here, and I also salute you for switching off your phones. So I would like to welcome our Bitou Executive Mayor, Jessica Kamkam, all the elders, and all of you who have joined us today. Thank you. Last year, we did a talk called Living in Two Worlds, and it was quite scary, actually. It was about the Anthropocene and what we are doing to our planet in terms of ecological collapse and societal collapse. And today, we're going to flip the script, and we're going to focus on what's actually happening on the ground in terms of who is doing what in the coalface of these eco and social challenges. What are the good news stories? What's actually happening on the ground? And who are the people that are doing these good things? So a big part of what tonight is to be able to have a conversation. And that's what we did at our previous event. We had a panel discussion, and there was a real opportunity for you to participate and ask questions. And I think in our day and age of disconnection, these opportunities to have conversation are rare and very important. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of Eden to Addo, because you are here in support of Eden to Addo. It is a fundraiser. So I can't assume that you all know what Eden to Addo is and what we do. So we are a non-profit organization. We are based in Plet. We've been around since 2006. And our vision is all about connection. Connecting protected areas, areas of ecological importance, connecting people and the land, and very importantly, connecting, not sure why that is doing an automatic change, very importantly, connecting these large mega reserves that we have in this area. Garden Route National Park has 2 arms, so connecting that. I'll show you on the map. The 2 arms of Garden Route National Park, so it's some people call the 1/2 Tsitsikamma, connecting that through the Addo Corridor. But right down here in the south, in our homeland, connecting Robberg Nature Reserve to Garden Route National Park to allow the movement of animals. There's aardvark, can you believe it, on the Robberg Coastal Corridor. They put up camera traps. There's a leopard who visits. So, and giving people the opportunity to experience this very exquisite last lifeline that actually keeps Robberg Nature Reserve alive through ecological processes such as seed dispersal and pollination. If we don't have these connections, then it's a bit like apartheid fortress conservation, where we isolate nature and nature needs to flow. In fact, if you think of the Earth as a human body and all the ecosystems as organs, then the animals and the insects that are constantly moving are like the circulatory system. And they are moving energy through their hooves, through their dung, through the pollination and seed dispersal. And so if you cut off that circulatory flow, you are cutting off vital processes to organs, if you think of it like that. And what would happen if we did that in the human body? Well, that's what's happening on the landscape. So what we do is connect these big mega reserves. So we have Garden Route National Park, Baviaanskloof, which is a World Heritage Site, and there you can see the yellow. It's almost already a contiguous corridor. And we're doing some very exciting research there with camera traps, seeing which animals are using it, and also very interesting and exciting animals that you wouldn't think would be there. And then we have the corridor that is connecting Baviaanskloof to Addo. That's the Springbokvlakte, where once the springbok used to migrate in their thousands. Farmers talk about how they would sit on their stoep, and for days the springbok would move past. and then finally linking Addo to the Noordsveld, which is another large protected environment that we have facilitated. So that's what we do. We assist landowners and farmers who want to declare their properties, and slowly but surely we create these contiguous corridors so that there can be movement of animals. And then, very importantly, how do we link that to people as the people of the landscape? And how can that be linked to sustainable livelihoods through regenerative agriculture and through ecotourism and hikes and guided hikes? So how can we link people in the land, and how can we link these very, very crucial last kind of lungs of ecosystems? So the question, though, is if we look at this exquisite landscape, where do we as humans fit into it? And as I said, we're living in the age of disconnection. So how can we reconnect again with our landscape? How can we see ourselves in this very interconnected web of life? Where do we fit in, and what role do we play? And how can we be positive agents of change? Because it is this very interconnected web of life that keeps us alive. So it's very important for us to really consider what role we play and how we can connect with each other and with the web of life. Because I think what's really important is to not only look at what we as humans have in common, but what we also have in common with the greater, more than human world as well, and other species, and the land. And what do we all long for? What are we longing for? What are you longing for? Because it's this longing on a large scale that makes history. And how do we put that longing into action together, connected? So I just want to quickly run you through the program. This was the welcome. And now we're going to have Ian Michler. He's going to do a short talk on a macro level, on a global level, of what is happening around the world that is positive in terms of eco and social challenges that we're facing, what is actually happening. And then we're going to have a very exciting panel discussion. And that's going to be the greater part of the evening. So we have Mayor Jessica Kamkam here. We have Hendri Coetzee from Nature's Valley Trust. We have Layla Staegemann from Cultural Connections and the Umthombo Trust. And we're going to be discussing a few points, which I'll be hosting, and then we'll open it to the floor for your questions as well, so we can really have an inclusive and engaging discussion. And yeah, just a bit of housekeeping. If you need the bathroom, you have to go out the door and into the main entrance, and as you walk just past the revolving doors, they're on your left. So with that, I am going to hand over to Ian Michler and just bring up his presentation.
Just to take them down a bit. Well, while we're just trying to dim the lights. So, as we said, good evening, everyone, and great to have you all here. I always complain when I do this talk that I've got the difficult part, because generally, Galio, you want me to use this, really? Okay. Let's see, is that better? I have the difficult part because typically the message that I convey around the Anthropocene is, as Rhian mentioned, a fairly negative one. Well, I think tonight, trying to find positives is actually, again, the hardest part, because the science over the last year since we did this talk has been relentless. Anyway, so Rhian, thanks for organizing this. And for those of you that were at the Living in Two Worlds discussion in November last year, we committed at that talk to having a more positive session, which would be highlighting positive aspects of the Anthropocene. And so that's my role here tonight. But before I do that, a quick review, as there have been some updates with regards to the bureaucracy and politics surrounding the Anthropocene. So if you recall, using the geological timescale, since about 12,000 years ago, we have been living in the Holocene. And the primary features of this epoch have been human development, conquest, expansion of nations, as well as the move to urban living, and of course, significant population growth. So these features of the Holocene have in turn contributed to what many believe has become the defining characteristic of our current time. Folks, based on biomass calculations, humans account for only 0.01% of life on Earth. However, our living patterns have become the primary factors shaping Earth's future. And so based on this, the scientific community has called for the geological timescale to be updated to reflect the reality that we are indeed living in the Anthropocene, or the human age. However, and this is very important, the concept continues to divide opinion. Earth scientists, they seek hard geological evidence from core sampling in rock strata. And then you have the environmentalists and sociologists, most of us here in this room tonight, who are describing the very real and visible evidence of what's going on our planet. And then, of course, there's the added debates of when does it all begin and where. And for those that support the Anthropocene, an updated geological timescale would look like something like this. So, as of March this year, we have an answer. One which I suspect is only the first salvo of an ongoing and fierce debate. But just over 50% of a panel under the guidance of the International Union of Geological Sciences voted against formally recognizing the Anthropocene. Now, I personally, and many, many others, believe that's a great shame. Because in essence, the rock scientists who've been looking in the strata have chosen to ignore the Anthropocene by disregarding the evidence of hundreds upon hundreds of peer-reviewed environmental and social studies. And they've done this on the grounds that they cannot identify or measure the precise beginning, date, or specific place where it all began. So that's where we are with regards to the bureaucracy. So let's move on to some of the positive developments. Few would disagree that climate change mitigation is the face of our efforts to transform our societies. And this involves numerous actions to reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions. Protecting and restoring habitats and critical ecosystems remains one of the most vital actions we can take. And so to this end, in December 2022, UNEP, which is the United Nations Environmental Programme, and the World Conservation Monitoring Center got most governments to sign an historic agreement that holds them to protect 30% of the Earth's land and water by 2030. So those of you who work in conservation and environmental issues will know this because it gets referred to as the 30 by 30 agreement. So that's all well and good, but how are we doing since that signing? So as of August this year, 17.5% of the Earth's terrestrial and inland waters are protected or conserved, alongside 8.5% of the oceans. And this is up from 15% and 8% respectively a decade earlier. So we're making some progress, even if it is slow. At the species level, there are some notable success stories. So mountain gorillas of East Africa, for example, now number 1,200 animals. I travel regularly there to East Africa, and I've seen over the years the advances. And that's up from less than 600 that were left in the 1980s. The conservation of the Iberian lynx has been hailed as the greatest recovery of a cat species ever achieved through conservation. In the 1990s, there were fewer than 50 of these animals. Now there are over 2,000, and they have very recently been removed from the endangered list. So something to celebrate. So other successes include the continued recovery of wild dog populations across Africa, Kenya's increase in its elephant populations, the bald eagles and the condors of America, and of course tigers across most countries in Asia. Not all, but most. And then on the species level, there's a little story that I really enjoy, and this is on a localized level. South of Sri Lanka, there's a large shipping lane, and we know that one of the biggest threats to whales is, of course, shipping contact and noise pollution. Well, I4, a big agency, got together with shipping companies and governments in that region, and they've managed to move a shipping lane, a major shipping lane, 15 to 20 kilometers south. And they are now starting to avoid contacts with these whales. We're waiting the first data, but hopefully it will show very positive impacts. Another vital metric involves efforts to transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And there's good news. The IEA, which is the International Energy Agency, 2024 report forecasts that renewables are on course to meet half of global electricity demand by the end of this decade. It's not a long time, not long to go. And solar is leading the way. Between 2024 and 2030, the world is set to add almost 3 times the gigawatt capacity than it did between 2017 and 2023. And so these global additions, to put that in perspective, are roughly equal to the current power capacity of China, the EU, India, and the USA combined. And contrary to the negative press that China always gets, they will be the leading supplier of this new energy, accounting for almost 60% of capacity. Wind power is another leading source of renewable energy, and there have been some notable advances, particularly in Europe and what we call the global south. So as of 2023, Spain has been generating more electricity from wind than it does from fossil fuels. And Germany is on target to achieve projections of 80% renewable energy generation by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2045. And here's a pivotal factor in these discussions is that according to the World Resources Institute, who monitors mining and renewable energies, building new solar and onshore wind power now costs 40% less than it does for coal or gas power. And this cost advantage for renewables will surely make the transition away from fossil fuels irreversible. This graph is an interesting one. It's put out by DNV, which is a leading energy and maritime risk assessment agency, and they indicate that carbon emissions from energy sources will be peaking this year and into next year. And you can see the fall off as we go forward. So typically agriculture is always in the top 4 contributors to carbon emissions and global footprints. And it's why many in the sustainability field or the studies area suggest that if we get it right on agriculture, we get it right on everything. That's a common saying in sustainability science. And regenerative agriculture is a vital component to transforming our food systems. In this regard, the sector is showing significant growth and investment, with the global market size now valued at 10.3 billion. And this is expected to reach 31.8 billion by the year 2030. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, or how do I put that in perspective? It's currently just under 10% of the global market size of our agricultural sector. But that's up from less than 1% 5 years ago. And in the beef industry, which is the largest contributor to agriculture's footprint, demand continues to fall. Both the UK and Germany are at record low consumption levels, and in the US, meat consumption has fallen 20% since 2020. It's disappointing for me that GDP-focused economic models continue to dominate, as they remain at the very core of the contradictions in our macro-level paradigms. And maybe we can discuss that in the Q&A session. But, however, there are some good news stories. Amsterdam, the city of Amsterdam, is trialing an alternative system called donut economics, or the donut model. And it's been ongoing now for over 5 years. And it's been successful to the extent that they've now committed to continuing the exercise. But basically, it looks to create a balance between citizens and the environment. And Brussels has established a city portfolio for the first time that is now investigating a transition to alternative and sustainable economic models to run the city. So population is always an issue in the Anthropocene debate. And there's interesting news on this front. In November 2022, you'll recall that global population reached 8 billion, with some projections claiming this could reach 10 billion by 2050. However, recent analysis suggests global population could now peak just below 9 billion in 2050. While this is a long shot in terms of the analysis that goes into this, researchers suggest significant investment in education, health, alongside poverty reduction programs, global population could start falling towards 7 billion by 2100. A lot different to the really, really dire predictions of 5-10 years ago. So in some ways, this one has been a surprising development. Churches have typically refrained from getting involved in environmental issues. In fact, there is a strong argument that holds religious doctrines that place humankind at the center of the universe are responsible for exacerbating the plunder of the natural world. However, in 2021, we had a significant mea culpa moment when the Anglican Communion, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Roman Catholic Church issued a joint statement accepting that biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, and climate change are the inevitable consequences of our actions, since we have greedily consumed more of the Earth's resources the planet can endure. And more recently, Judaism has also committed themselves to fighting climate change as part of their faith. Now, what's interesting is that right now, as we sit here, there's a major United Nations biodiversity conference taking place in Cali in Colombia. And for the first time ever, the Anglican Church has sent a delegation, a high-powered delegation, to that conference. Amazing. On to legal and constitutional issues. So Ecuador was the first country to enshrine rights of nature in its 2008 constitution. And since then, over 100 countries have either followed suit or incorporated constitutional rights to a healthy environment into their legal system. And in July 2022, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring that everyone on the planet has a right to a healthy environment. And here's another notable development at a regional level. In March of this year, indigenous leaders of numerous Pacific oceans ratified the Declaration for the Ocean. It's an historic treaty, folks, because it recognizes whales as legal persons with inherent rights, including the right to freedom of movement and the ability to thrive alongside humanity. In August, I was at an environmental conference in South Dakota in the USA, and a lot of those indigenous folks were at that conference, and there was a lot of excitement about this declaration. And so to end, there are two academic collaborations that I'd like to draw attention to, and they focus on positive aspects of the Anthropocene. Both of them, I think, are worth following for those that are interested in these issues. So the University of Exeter in the UK have a research team that have started identifying and tracking sources of hope, or what they call positive tipping points. Now, typically in environmental sciences, the notion of a tipping point is a negative one, and it defines declining and then collapsing ecosystems. In this instance, the university is tracking a range of positive tipping points from agriculture and ecosystem regeneration to politics and public opinion. The idea is to assist in activating these positive tipping points in ways that could combine into cascades for positive change. And then lastly, we have a joint initiative that includes Stellenbosch University-based Center for Complex Systems in Transition, along with McGill University and the Stockholm Resilience Center. That's a name many of you will be familiar with. They are collecting what they refer to as a seeds of a good Anthropocene. And that's the website up there. To quote the website, a good Anthropocene is likely to be radically different from the world of today, involving fundamental change in human-environment relationships, changes in values, cultures, worldviews, and even the power and gender relations influencing social norms and behavior. People choose their actions based on their view of society and their expectation of the future. If only views are negative, and well, if all our views are negative, we're likely to steer towards a negative future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. So now we're just going to have a quick set change. So you can stand up and shake your body. And is it feeling hot in here? Let's open some doors. And yeah, so you can get up and shake your body a bit while we just move some chairs and change the presentation, switch on some lights.
with productivity and wisdom. But secondly, and this is probably the most important one, particularly at the big level, is that a lot of the issues we face on a macro level are scary. Climate change, population growth, all of these issues, the poverty levels and the social decay and the ramifications from that, they are almost overwhelming. And the best way to overcome anything that seemingly is overwhelming is to get to understand every aspect of that issue. And that's what my work in the Anthropocene is all about, because I started off trying to understand at a local level this notion of trophy hunting being a sustainable form of conservation. So the best way to save lions and elephants in Africa is to kill them. So that didn't make sense to me. And also the ecotourism models that I'm involved in, how sustainable are they? And that's how I started. And eventually it led me to the big picture issues, which are the most daunting ones in many ways. But once you understand how all these threads are involved and the complexity, then I think you can attack whatever issue you're dealing with at a macro or a micro level with greater certainty, assuredness, wisdom, all of those issues. So I would say, go out and read and get as much awareness as you can.
Thank you, Ian.
What advice? I often talk about things that sometimes feel really simple, and I think the longer I've been in this work, the more I've come down to these really simple, everyday things, and that's the advice that I would give to people who want to make a difference, is know yourself first before you go out and try and make a difference in somebody else's life or in an ecological situation. Know that you have the skills to really listen, that you have the skills and you know what it feels like to be really heard and how that feels. Particularly in community projects and the social work that I've been involved in, all too often I see people well-meaning, coming in strong and having a passion, and it's with good intent, but they haven't checked in with themselves and their regulation. Do they have the capacity? Is it long-term? Are they going to be able to withhold the same kind of time and energy budget that they're putting into the project? And I see so many things fall flat and so many projects get left by the wayside, and for me that perpetuates a lot of the same issues, particularly in the social space. So yeah, a lot of advice I feel is like what we do with the kids, which is, a lot of the adults we're meeting are working with don't have those things of regulation, understanding their stress levels, and then when you're going out to make a difference and finding your niche, because we're in a meta crisis. If you were here at Ian's last talk and you listen now, there's so many places to get involved. I think we all have the capacity to get involved, whether it's on a tiny scale in your everyday life or doing a massive project or huge, influential impact. But if you haven't on a personal level checked in with yourself, and you're likely to burn out, not have the capacity after a short amount of time, and that's just what we see all the time. So my advice would be, research, but check in with yourself, and check in with all the methods that you can come in, from the science to the creativity, to the art, to the practical, the gardening, all of those things, because there's a way to make change through many different lenses.
A couple of quick things from my side. I think start small. Look in your own backyard. What is there? Try and get rid of exotics, especially the invasive species. Try and plant local indigenous. By doing so, you support a whole range of insects and stuff. And if we do get the right species in our gardens, you can actually, on your own level, sort of link fragmented habitats, so it will promote local wildlife. Secondly, the one amazing thing about Plet is that it's incredibly mobilized community. Just look at how many people are here tonight. So, you know, you don't have to go and look for, you know, to find some group to join or to support, you know, from beach cleanups, cleaning the reefs, and so on and so forth. You know, the Bird Club, they're also very active. So yeah, look at, you know, joining one of those groups and supporting them. I think that will also make a big difference. And then, you know, another thing is like the dogs. You know, if you see people walking around on the beaches, you know, with their dogs off leash and running into the dunes and disturbing white-fronted plovers and, you know, destroying the dunes and stuff, you know, walk over to them and maybe just ask them or remind them, you know, the zoning of the beaches is, they're there for a very specific reason. So yeah, small things in our local area that you can do and encourage other people to do. I think one of the big things is that we need to kind of institutionalize, you know, these sort of core values and norms. And you can often do that by example, you know, doing the right thing and other people see you doing the right thing. And that's a good way to encourage other people to do the same.
Yeah, I totally agree. Small beginnings, never despise small beginnings. I would say, yeah, also, you know, study the environment where you are in and also respect people's space and their culture and understand that not everyone think the same. You know, some people have been separated from their cultural way of living because of, you know, our past. So we need to respect that, you know, we need to cultivate that love for nature. It's not that it's not there, it's there. Because in the African culture, I mean, that's where you actually have found recycling and all these things the most, because people just used what they needed. So I would say, you know, really that is the way to go, to respect the environment, including the people, respect people's cultures, their way of beliefs, and then also I would say, like Layla said, understand and know yourself and know what you have to offer. And that what you have to offer is not necessarily what you can impose on the next person, but it's more transfer of skills.
So the next question is one that I hear on a podcast that I love to listen to, The Great Simplification, and he always asks all his guests the same question. And the question is, if you could wave a magic wand and do just one thing, and there was no personal recourse for whatever you chose to do, but you waved the magic wand to make life better for people and nature, and the generations to come, what would you do?
Yeah, I'm getting the tough one, huh?
You've got notes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say in our local area, hopefully my wand will take away all the alien invasive trees, because they're really a big nightmare for us, you know, for many different reasons. And then, yeah, also, you know, as mentioned before, you know, our local population has grown quite considerably in the last 20 years. I looked at some stats the other day as well, and before, well, around 2002, there were less than 20,000 people living here in Plet, and now we're around 65,000 people. So it's basically tripled. And I also think that, I don't know how this is going to sound, but like in conservation, you know, we work out the carrying capacity for natural vegetation, and based on that, work out how many species of animals and stuff it can support. I think we must do the same for humans, because, you know, talking about tipping points and just pushing everything too far, I think, you know, development, habitat destruction, degradation, you know, those things are, yeah, they're a nightmare for us. And, you know, if we keep on pushing and, you know, growing and stuff like that, it's ultimately just going to destroy nature, and then we're all going to end up with nothing. So, yeah, I guess that's what I'll do.
It better be a powerful magical wand.
Yeah.
So you say a magic wand for people and nature and our communities, our planet. And I immediately I tried not to look at these questions and really just answer on the moment. And I think if we weren't there, nature would figure itself out. So I'm not going to put my wand on nature. You know, a lot of the science is like if the people stop doing the things that they're doing, nature will restore itself and it'll figure itself out. And so without being too garden root, I honestly feel like my magic wand would be for all people to feel love. And it's, again, like this simple thing, and we talk about it, you know, in this more, I say to garden root because I grew up here, and, you know, there's a lot of like love and hugs and fairyland going around. And that for me is when I work with the children I work with and people in conservation, when they have love, which is their basic needs of safety and being heard and listening and all these things that we all think we have under control, but seem to be deteriorating rapidly due to a number of things, we're able to access that longing again and able to access what we really want to do, which I think, in essence, like when we really feel loved and we're able to expand that love, it's very often linked to service. It's linked to being in service to others. It's linked to being in service to the ecosystem. So it's a pink flavored colored wand, but it's just for all people to feel love and be loved.
Well, love is already in the basket, so that's been taken care of. And now I'm imagining myself with a tutu and a magic wand. Well, honestly speaking, you know, if I had a magic wand, I would most probably give people big pockets of land. I know it's EFF vibes, but just bear with me. I would most probably give people pockets of land for them to have their own farming. They can do subsistence farming. Just redefine poverty, man. I mean, poverty is not about what's in your bank account. You know, just for people to be self-sustainable and for people to have dignity. That would be my magic wand.
I also want to have a turn with the magic wand. No, I think it changes from day to day, but I think what Layla said is very poignant, that it's good to say what comes into your head. And if I had a magic wand, I would remove greed with one foul swoop. And in its place, I would put the well-being of people and nature, because we are nature. So where greed was, I would put as our top priority the well-being of us and all the life we share Earth with.
Nothing left. Stu, am I allowed to declare Arsenal Premier League champions for the next year? Hey? Make a lot of us feel a lot happier, hey? I'm on your. I would take one of those rocket ships that Elon Musk has built, put him, Donald Trump, Jacob Zuma, Jair Bolsonaro, Boris Johnson, and all the toxic males on this planet in that rocket, and program it so that it never comes back. That's what I would do.
So those who are at the coalface of, you know, facing the fact that there are so many people in our own town living below the poverty line, or witnessing the destruction of ecosystems, my question to you panelists is, what gives you the courage and motivation to get up each morning and be of service to the greater good, despite the enormous challenges and the constant negative media we are served?
Yeah, I think, well, living by the coast, just a nice sunny day is already a good enough reason to get out of bed. But yeah, I think just knowing that, I could potentially make a difference that day. I'm always, there are always new opportunities that comes along, and the best you can, do, in my opinion, is just to be positive and keep your head down and push and, fight the good fight. And, the wheel turns, and, eventually we'll hopefully make a difference. So that's all we can do.
We're lucky in the garden roots, so also getting up every day and seeing the sunshine and the incredible ecosystems we have around us. But also definitely seeing what happens when people are blooming and nature is in a place where it really wants to be, so in the conservation and the ecological design work that we do, as well as the restoration and the stories and the things that come out of the youth that we work with, that really gives me a lot of motivation and a lot of excitement and inspiration is the people that I work with. And something you said is like just watching people remember. I'm working also with people who are historically and now systemically oppressed in many ways, and watching them just remember where they come from, who they are, what they're able to achieve and do when they're just re-empowered and reignited. That really gets me up every morning. And also the detachment of seeing the difference. That was something that happened to me recently. I'm in my late 20s, and I always felt like this rearing thing that like in my lifetime I will see the differences, and all the projects that we do, we're gonna see all these incredible outcomes. And I was on a conference in Joburg recently with these amazing youth from all around the country, and we had this conversation over, like, we stand on the shoulders of the people we came after, and how we might not see all these wonderful big changes that we want to see. And that detachment was kind of liberating and keeps me motivated, because I'm like, okay, but maybe I'm setting up something for the next generation and the next generation, and it might only happen in a few generations or more to come, some of the things that I want to see. But that motivates me because it means I'm part of something so much bigger than just me.
And what Layla has just described is how to be a good ancestor.
Well, what motivates me? Well, this is my hometown, I was born here. I almost said my date of my birth here. But yeah, I was born here. I come from a generation of fighters, man. My ancestors used to be goat farmers. So, I just feel that if we don't find your purpose, and if you don't make that small step in making a difference, you will never be able to see the next generation, will never be able to see the fruits of your labor. So it's not necessarily for you to see, the fruits of your labor, it's for the next generation. So it's about purpose. It's about, not being scared to make decisions. It's just be yourself and just do what you do, I think we get so worried about other people, their opinions and what they think, and you start to doubt yourself. No, you were born with your own set of skills. You were born with your own ideas. I always say, what is igniting your passion and fire inside of you, it won't be the same for the next person. So, I believe that God has put the set of skills, given it to you, the passion's given it to you, for you to make that difference to your fellow human being. And it doesn't mean that our destiny and our roads are all the same. No, do your part, and another person will do their part, and together, that change that we all want, it will eventually happen.
I think what Jessica is talking about are those positive tipping points. When we all are in our power and acting in service and in love, then that's when we reach those positive tipping points. Ian?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think everyone has alluded to aspects of what we would all grasp onto. So, I think for me, obviously, the opposite of hope is hopelessness. And I don't think there's anyone in this room who wants to live in that state. So, I think hope, if you're a reasonably positive person, is what we would all grasp onto. And I think for me, a big secret in a way is to set yourself and your community and whoever you're working with very realistic goals. So, you know, hope for me is about a path. It's about seeing a way forward. It's about understanding there's a possible way of doing something. It's not about some fantastical goal. You know, so you don't set unrealistic goals. You don't set this end point without considering a way forward through reaching that end point. So for me, that's the essence of hope, is to be realistic and take it in incremental. Guys, the only way we're going to, if we've got any chance of transforming our society, is going to be incrementally. It's not through some fantastical goal. So I think that's the big thing. And then the other is, again, like we've alluded to, is that you identify and you work with people who are like-minded. Very important, like-minded people. All right, not people who are going to hijack projects or have got hidden agendas, or like-minded people, philosophically, spiritually, and have got legs to stay the course. And when you surround yourselves with those sort of people, those sort of agencies, then, you know, yeah, much is possible.
So I haven't got to all the questions, but I would really like to open up to your questions, because this is meant to be a conversation and a chance for us to all connect. And not all of you have your voice heard, because that would take too long, but at least some of you. So Natalie has a question. I'm going to... Wait. Otherwise you won't be heard. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rhi. It's not really a question. It's more of an encouraging statement. We live in Kransbos, and although Bitou boundary is our border, we're not incorporated into the municipal boundary of Bitou. We're sort of outside the urban edge. And for a long time, we've been a very maverick community, at odds with each other. And Rhian spoke about disconnect. Ian spoke about the church and religion, mea culpa. Layla spoke about love. And I would just like to tie all of those things together, because it's actually in the heart where all those wars are won. And if one person can turn around and change their own heart and find that love, greed automatically falls away. Disconnection automatically falls away. Those things that keep us divided, and let's be honest, it's not really the Aboriginal poorer cultures. They all live on top of each other. They all live together. And if you know our communities in Plet, you'll know that people are very open and loving and caring. And this is something that we see in nature. Nature is not disconnected. You try and plant something in a greenhouse, that grass seed is going to find its way into one of your pots, even though you don't want it there. Nature is not disconnected, and we are nature, as you said. So if we can just find that disconnect within ourselves, as you so beautifully said it, know yourself, and find that love, you can actually radically change society. And that's where we need to get to. Because nature isn't disconnected, and we can't actually afford to live disconnected anymore. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're a gangster, people don't actually want to be disconnected. This is why nature is showing us. The sharks are showing us. The baboons are talking to us. They're all talking to us if we just listen. So I just wanted to say thank you for that and this opportunity, and well done. And we love the elephants. Thanks, guys. We have to go.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've heard the concept of hope, and also you mentioned it earlier about being overwhelmed. And I think amongst my peers, and I've also experienced this myself a lot, is this sense of kind of hopelessness, where, you know, what can I actually do? And I feel like the problems are too big. And especially you who have worked with the youth, like Layla, I know Hendri, you as well, work quite a bit with younger people. How do you experience this? Do you notice that this is like a big thing, a lot of hopelessness around? And how would you say you can help young people to kind of get past this problem?
Layla, are you happy to answer how to deal with hopelessness as a youth?
So thank you for the question, and we definitely, that is where the eco youth circles were born from, was literally that, noticing like the lack of hope and the access to hope, in particularly in the communities that we are working with. And it's a difficult question because it encompasses many things, and I think on like a, particularly as young people, we're flooded constantly with media, social media, whether it's Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and the news and the TVs that are on, and so all of that together, I think, is such a bombardment and such an unnatural flood of information that's also caused a lot of the hopelessness, is like that being the main thing that gets shown to us. And when you flip that, like I find I follow a lot of people on social media, a lot of people doing really amazing stuff, and then I get stuck in the opposite echo chamber, which is like super hopeful and like, wow, everything's amazing and it's going so well and we're really getting somewhere, and then I'll kind of go into a work situation, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not true at all. So I would say, as a young person with lack of hope, is be very careful what you're taking in terms of media and information, because I think that's a lot of where it's caused, especially with the teenagers. We work with teenagers, and that's a huge amount of it. And yeah, it's also the connection to nature, and it also sounds so, but I find it with the kids that we work with. We do 3 camps a year, and our camps are 4 days, and they're tech-free, and we have some of our guest facilitators like Michelle in the room, and those spaces, they're so full of hope, they're so full of excitement and fun and talent and learning about the environment and restoring. We plant trees and we journal, and there's so many different things that we do in those. So I would, as a young person, I think surround yourself with things that spark your hope and that encourage you every single day, and just keep reading those things and keep finding those things, because we can choose to be hopeless, because there's a lot of information out there that makes it like that. And I definitely have days where I don't wake up feeling motivated, and I also feel hopeless, but then it's a constant choice to look at those things that make you feel hopeful and create the spaces where others can access that hope.
Honourable Mayor, I have a question for you. You've all spoken about greed. So we have a lot of development happening in Plet, and I want to know what we can all do to understand what the future plan is, what will be developed, why it will be developed, and what the impact is. So what value is it bringing? Because it just seems, and I might be a little bit misguided and stupid about it, maybe I didn't see a memo that went somewhere or a sign that didn't go up, or it went up and I didn't pay attention. But we're seeing stuff that is very worrying. And when I've asked about it, I've been told, oh, that was granted years ago. There's nothing you can do about it. But that doesn't work anymore. I mean, surely there's got to be a flag put in the ground now where we have like what do you call it? Exactly, or just a little bit of a draw the line and reevaluate. Because what was going on 2002 is not what's happening now. So that's my question to you. What are, not you, but everyone around you, and what do we do to help make sure that Plet does not become a pit of greed? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Look, developments, it is very regulated in terms of what is allowed and the processes that needs to be followed. So it is totally a regulated environment, a very technical environment. And secondly, some of the powers that used to be invested in a council has sort of been taken away and given to administrative officials because they've got the technical expertise as to, with your EIAs and all the other building regulations and environmental regulations and all the tick boxes that needs to happen. So from a council perspective, we normally get reports either quarterly that will give us updates on, applications and how far they are and all the rest of it. But what I can say is that I think it's about finding a balance. We cannot be anti-development, just totally anti-development, because the world is constantly changing. I always say to people that, sorry for this, that I'm going to say now, but I was born in the cracks. And believe you me, when I was born in the cracks, it was just greenery all around, indigenous trees. And I often wish it was still like that. But the fact is, it has changed. People moved in, people leave the cities, they come and live here. So on a small scale even, a development, where it's a residential property, even on that small scale, it does affect the environment. So we often look at big developments and then we just see the impact, but it really starts even from a smaller scale. What I would say is, I think where we as government can improve, it's in terms of our public participation, because it's actually very restricted in terms of, especially when there's objections from the public. They are not just going to accept any objection. Your objection has to be really in line with either a violation of environmental law, or it might be that this development is in a natural corridor, or that type of thing. So when there's developments that's going to happen, and if it goes out on public participation, what I would advise that if people look at those developments, and they have objections, that they should really look into how they structure those objectives. Otherwise, they're just going to look at the objectives and just going to be, no, these people, they just don't want. They call grannies, sorry for the word, or they just been difficult, because it is split, And I understand our area is it's a environmental sensitive area, but I do believe it's about finding that balance. And I do think that, I currently am the appeal authority, as the mayor. But even if you have the appeal authority, if you appeal, you need to have valid reasons why you appeal. So it is basically about, us understanding the process, understanding the environmental laws, which is too many, even for myself. I look at things, I try and equip myself with certain things, but there are times when we need the expertise of, environmental scientists or people that are really skilled, in terms of how things affect the environment. So that would be what I say, I would say let's try and find a balance.
Husband, wife.
So Jessica, on that note, is there research on whether there are sufficient resources in this area to enable the development that is taking place? Is the science out there? Has the research been done? Do we know that there's enough water, sewage management, etc.?
So that's a good question, because I know that's where the concern is. Yes, we as a municipality, we have to have a long-term plan. So in terms of our water security and in terms of our storage capacity, and I know there's challenges at the moment for us to look at long-term planning and in terms of electrical supply with ESCOM, So yeah, there is constantly plans being developed, studies being done, plans submitted to council. We are also, I've at a meeting last week for us to look at more like a long-term 15-year plan in terms of our water security and in terms of our bulk services. Let me say it like that. Because it is quite important that must be done. We cannot just approve developments if we are not secure in that. And then I also want to say that we do find some of these big developments that they will put in applications for waivers and all sorts of things, because with developments there is normally augmentation fees that they need to pay, in terms of to connect to the services. And if we find there's a capacity issue, then normally that would be used to upgrade the services that is needed. But yeah, we are currently looking at our water security. We are currently looking at securing more funding in terms of that, because as you know, we've got the town area, you've got your supply, and then we've got the cracks, that area, they've got their supply, Bitou their supply. So I think at the moment the Bitou, because in the cracks we've got some bulk services upgrades, that's going to happen in the next few years. But I think the area that at the moment we are a bit concerned about is the Bitou area, because that area has not really been given much attention. So we are looking into, how we can connect them to the main supply. We did look at alternative sources, like more boreholes, harvesting rainwater, that type of thing. But the government is very strict with that because, our challenge is here, we've got a high iron content, So if we do get more boreholes, we need to get a treatment plant and all the rest of it. So we are looking into other sources of supply as well.
So just on your question, I'm going to take that out broadly speaking. So that problem currently, under current paradigms, is not going away. It's fundamental to why environmentally and socially the world is in trouble. And so those of you who've read my book, Living in Two Worlds, you'll understand that there's three main drivers that are playing themselves out. And one of them, contrary to what we like to believe, is that our current political and economic paradigms are in complete contradiction to our environmental and social objectives. And until we unravel that, we have no chance. We have zero chance, okay? And I'm sorry, it's a bit negative, but that's what we have to work on. And so what am I saying? Well, our economic and political paradigms are based on short-term decision-making, because Jessica needs to get elected again. I need a dividend from my company that I've invested in. You need a pension payout. You need your discovery to pay your medical aid bills, okay? So it's short-term thinking, all right? And it's based on continued increasing use and exploitation of resources on our planet, all right? So always seeking growth. That's allied to population increasing, okay? So that's the one. The political spectrum is that the politicians require those same businesses to become elected. And so we're seeing it in the US right now. It's the most blatant form of criminality where Elon Musk is standing there handing out $1 million checks to get people to vote for Donald Trump. Okay, so those two are in bed together. Our environmental objectives, folks, are long-term, and they're based on restricting consumption, reducing use, and improving waste, okay? And our social objectives are based on redirecting the profits or the proceeds of our economic models. And that's not happening. And it's not happening because neoliberalism is the current doctrine that runs our economic systems, and it's a fairly vicious form of capitalism. And so that answers your question for me in the big picture. So what's happening, what you're talking about is taking place right around the world, every city, town, wherever.
What if we were to look at the Bitou municipality as a space of possibility to address what you mentioned, Mayor Kamkam, the balance, right? So there's development, it's inevitable. However, there's a growth mindset, and could we, as a municipality, look at the donut economics model and try it out? There are other provinces, there are other municipalities in South Africa that are trying it, and that it's really successful. So my question is, would we be able to look at that?
So just to describe the donut model for those who don't know what it is, it's literally the shape of a donut. And what it means is that we don't, the outer ring of the donut means we don't overshoot our ecological capacity, what the earth can give us in terms of water, air, and what waste we're putting into it. So we're not overshooting the earth's capacity. But the whole of the donut is where no one is falling into. So we're meeting everyone's basic needs in terms of food, housing, access to water. So no one's falling into the hole, and we're not overshooting. And that donut is the sweet spot where we meet everyone's basic needs within the carrying capacity of Earth. That's donut economics.
Let me answer that question. Of course, we are open to discussions, you know, but like I say, I feel it's about, let me just say, but that the three largest sectors in Plet is number one, the finance sector, it's 31%, 32%. Number two, it is, what did I say? It's retail, 18%.
What was number one?
Number one is the finance sector. You know, these big properties. Yeah. So number one is the finance sector because of, you know, the property market in the garden route. Number two is retail, which is at 18%. And then number three is the government sector, 11%. So in Bitou, we don't necessarily have that problem of mass developments, you know, mass production, that type of thing. So I think we are fairly sort of balanced in that sense. But I do feel that we still need to look at our economy and what we have and how we can actually allow people to access in terms of for them to become self-sustainable. So if that donut model is going to help, then we are open for discussions.
I just want to, just with the discussion around the donut economics, I would love to encourage also discussion around community sufficiency rather than, like, just the word self-sufficiency always catches for me because it comes back to like this idea of one person being able to meet all their needs or in their backyard. And as a edible landscaper and food grower myself, like I know that's just absolutely not possible. And so community sufficiency is a lot more resilient and able, and that includes like that whole donut, all the people producing all the different things when it comes to the self-sufficiency and security.
That's how it starts in the backyard.
Did you have a question?
Hello, and thank you for a stimulating conversation. I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to put two challenges out to two people who suggested some cool things. So, Henri, you suggested carrying capacity of the Bitou area, and I'm wondering whether Nature's Valley Trust would be willing to execute a research study and identify what is the carrying capacity of the Bitou municipality that results in no one falling into the donut hole. I think that would be kind of helpful for the municipality. I'm talking about the carrying capacity of community sufficiency, the human footprint. You know, do we have the nature resources we need for the human footprint we have to be community sufficient? And then the second question is to our wonderful mayor is, you speak about sort of food gardens and things like that, and I'd really like to know whether the Bitou municipality has done an audit on the potential agricultural land that belongs to the municipality and how we can release that in conjunction with, you know, some of the incredible non-profit organizations that work in the area to really get that land productive and to be engaging with, community sufficiency in a pragmatic manner. So those are my 2 challenges to each of you.
We are way over time. We're planning to finish at 7:30. So I see, Tony, you still had a question, and there are still questions. How are you feeling? Can we do some more questions? Are we at the end of our tether? Because I still just need to say some closing remarks and thank yous. So I might have to just say one last question, Tony.
My wife's digging me in the rope, short story. So here's a short story. Last year, I entered a surf ski race, the Maui to Molokai. It's one of the epic surf ski races around the world. And about a month after they had accepted my entry, I got a letter from the Molokai municipality apologizing that they are canceling my entry. And the reason for it being that they felt that they had reached a tipping point on the island of tourism. There were too many jumbo jets flying in, there were too many hired cars driving around, their beaches were a mess, and they had come to a point where they just said, no more new tourists. And they basically said that the race is just for those people who've entered previously. And if there's a spot that came available, they'd let me know. Well, I didn't hear from them, so I'm not waiting. So my question, and one of the questions that possibly you could ask your panel, is what is the plet that we would like to see in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time? And I think the one thing that's really been missing, and it became really evident when the town came under such pressure for the small boat harbour. It was amazing how everybody pulled together and managed to block it. But the one thing that was absolutely absent was there was no vision for what would we like to see happening on Central Beach. And with the absence of a plan, a developer comes along and just sees profit, gain, greed. Let me see how much we can make out of this. There was Chinese consortiums involved. I was involved with running tourism at the time. And it would have been a mess. It would have been an absolute mess, and it would not have turned out to be the plet that we all strive for and have in our hearts. So I think I love the idea. I've never heard of the donut program, but I definitely think that's something, Jessica, if that was something that you could institute now in the municipality, that any development that comes along to plet, the municipality analyzes it and says, well, does it fit into the plet donut? Okay? If we are all sharing the same vision, and that vision is driven by love and community and support and helping people grow, if we share that common vision and there's a plan, and our municipality is there to provide a service, but it's the first point that a developer moves towards. And once the municipality says, yeah, this is great, more rates, more taxes, more revenue flow, but does that mean that's going to improve the lives of the people that are living here? And I think that's the shared common vision. And if we could have a group of elders that's driving what that donut is going to look like, I think that's a great place to start. Thanks.
So I think more than a question, that is a call out for how I actually opened, and that is, what are we all longing for? What do we all have in common that we are all longing for, and how can we put that together into a common vision that meets everyone's needs and is within the carrying capacity of this incredibly beautiful place we all live in. So I think on that note, we should close the panel. Thank you very much to Rhian, Jessica, Layla, and Hendri. Really appreciate your time and your input, and I hope there was some inspiration that we take forward. I would just like to say, in terms of the hopelessness and what we can do in terms of, one of my questions that I never got to was, what habits do we need to change on a day-to-day basis? What small things can we do? And something that I found very inspiring, and not everybody has access to nature, but there are still places you can sit, even if you are if you're living in a shack, there are still places you can sit where you have some access to nature, but that you have a daily or weekly sit spot. And it's a place that you go to on a daily or a weekly basis, and you just sit, and you listen, and you look, and you hear, and you smell, and you feel, and you experience the changes of season. And it's through that regular sit spot that you develop a connection with this place that is your place and your place in it. And it is through that regular sit spot experience that we are able to again feel our connection with the greater web of life and who we are in it. So may you all find a regular sit spot. Thank you, everybody. Sorry, before you all go, I have to do some thank yous. Please, 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 don't go yet. So I really just wanted to thank all of you, of course, as I said, for coming, because that's having agency, and for engaging. And I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. It happened last time. There is a great need for connection and conversation, so we just have to do it again. I'd, of course, like to thank all the panelists for their time and their insight and inspiration. I'd like to thank the Beacon Island for sponsoring this venue for us. We are a non-profit, so really, really kind of them to sponsor this venue. And to Newstead for that incredible bubbly, which they also sponsored. And they are a great example of a local company that are looking into biodynamic farming. They're upskilling staff. They said their chef used to mow the lawn for the municipality, and now he's the chef at Newstead Wines. So, that's what it's about. It's about people not falling into the hole in the donut. So a very good example. And one other very good habit to have, of course, is to support local. That is a huge, huge impactful habit change we can all make. To Tug for the kombucha, also locally brewed, and to Karma Rossi for taking the photos today. And then to each and every one who is daily getting up and making a difference in service to life. I'd like to thank you all and recognize you. And if you would like to contribute to the work of Eden to Addo, we'd love for you to become a corridor custodian. As you go out, there's a QR code, you can scan it, or you can go to our website and find it that way. But just a small amount a month means that we can continue our work, and you are participating and having agency in ways that you may not be able to do in your own space. Oh, yes, and thank you, Jess, for the live stream. So thank you, everyone, and we hope to have a conversation just like this again. I think it's very empowering and change-making. So thank you for coming.